Zuri Kamau, a social media influencer, had built a reputation for herself in Kenya, showcasing the country's beauty and culture to the world. She had worked hard to grow her following and create engaging content, and her efforts had finally paid off with a big deal with a popular beauty brand. A new email notification. She almost ignored it. Most brand emails were scams or lowball offers, but something about the subject line made her blink twice. From Global Creators Initiative. Subject: Congratulations. Her thumb hesitated before she tapped it open. Dear Ms. Kamau, we're thrilled to invite you to be part of our Global Creators campaign in Toronto, Canada. All expenses, flights, accommodation, meals will be covered. You'll collaborate with international brands, gain exposure to new audiences, and share your creative journey with the world. We look forward to your confirmation. Her page, Zuri Creates, had been her pride for 3 years, photo shoot and promotional event, and Zuri was thrilled to be leaving Kenya for the first time. Mama, her voice was small, cautious, as if saying it too loudly would make it vanish. Mama, I think I'm going to Canada. Canada? She frowned slightly. You mean, like on the TV? You. Zuri laughed, half in disbelief, half in panic. Just flight, hotel, everything. They want me to create content for them. A real campaign. Her mother stepped closer, her dark eyes searching Zuri's face for any trace of a joke. Zuri, do you know how far that is? How cold? I'll buy a coat, Zuri whispered, though she'd never even touched snow before. For a moment, her mother just looked at her not as a child, but as a woman on the verge of something. Then she reached out and cupped her daughter's cheeks in both hands. My girl, God is opening doors for you. On the day of her departure, Zuri dressed stylishly in one of Kenya Prince palazzo pants and turtleneck polo with boots and winter jacket. Her mother tucked a small packet of Kenyan tea leaves. For when you miss the smell of home, she said, sliding it into a side pocket. Jomo Kenyatta International Airport smelled of coffee, metal detectors, and the strange mix of joy and ache that clings to departures. When the boarding announcement finally came, Zuri's mother pulled her into a hug so tight she could feel her heartbeat. Go and show them who you are, my daughter, she said, her voice thick. But remember, you carry us with you. Zuri swallowed the lump in her throat. Always, Mama. As she walked toward the gate, she looked back one last time. Her mother stood with her hand raised, with her friend Mercy waving for the last time. On the plane, Nairobi fell away beneath her, a patchwork of tin roofs, busy roads, and fields stretching to the horizon. Somewhere over the clouds, the girl from a small Nairobi apartment began the journey that will change her life forever. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane descended through thick clouds. Zuri leaned toward the window, expecting to see the neat, green patchwork she was used to from Nairobi flights. Toronto Pearson International Airport was a blur of polished floors, rolling suitcases, and voices in accents that sounded strange yet musical to her ear. She clutched her travel documents like a lifeline, following the signs for immigration. By the time she stepped outside the terminal, the cold punched her in the face like a rude but oddly beautiful surprise. A sleek black sedan idled at the curb, the driver holding a card with her name printed neatly in bold letters, Zuri Mwangi. Inside, the warmth felt heavenly. The driver, a polite man in his 40s with a hint of a French accent, helped her with her suitcase. Welcome to Canada, Miss Mwangi. Your accommodation is in downtown Toronto, about 40 minutes from here. As the city skyline came into view, Zuri's phone buzzed with a welcome email from the brand she'd be working with. She smiled. This was it, the start of everything she dreamed of. That evening, jet-lagged but restless, she decided to explore the neighborhood around her hotel. The streets glittered with holiday lights, and snow crunched under her borrowed boots. She ducked into a small coffee shop, its windows fogged from the warmth inside. The smell of cinnamon and freshly brewed coffee wrapped around her like a hug. Ordering a chai latte, her little piece of home, she turned to find a place to sit and almost collided with a man carrying 2 mugs. Whoa, sorry, he said, steadying her by the elbow. His voice was deep, confident, but his smile was warm. It's okay, she said, catching her balance. I wasn't watching where I was going. He handed 1 mug to the woman beside him, who thanked him and moved toward a table, leaving him standing there for a beat too long. "You're not from here, are you?" he asked, eyes flicking to her scarf, her boots, the way she glanced at the snow outside like it was an alien visitor. "Nope," she said, smiling. "First time in Canada. First time out of Kenya, actually." His brow lifted in mild surprise. "Kenya? That's a long way. What brings you here?" "Well, more like a collaboration with a brand." She tried to keep her voice casual, not wanting to sound like she was bragging about her first big break. "That's impressive," he said, his tone genuine. "Welcome to Toronto, then." He extended his hand. "I'm Liam." She shook it, feeling the strange mix of calloused warmth in his grip. "Zuri." They spoke for only a few minutes before he excused himself, glancing at the woman waiting for him. But as he left, he looked back once, just briefly. Zuri, sipping her chai la, didn't know that the man with the easy smile and quiet confidence was Liam Lancaster, one of the youngest billionaires in the country, a tech mogul who avoided publicity almost as much as he avoided shallow conversations. And Liam, stepping back into the cold, didn't know why he couldn't shake the image of the woman in the red scarf, eyes lit like city lights against the snow. Zuri spent the next few days bouncing between brand meetings, photo shoots, and video content planning. Her days were full, but her nights were quiet, just her thoughts, and the soft hum of the city outside her hotel window. On the third evening, she found herself back at the same little coffee shop. She told herself it was because they made the best chai she'd had in Toronto, but deep down, she knew she was hoping for something else. And there he was. Liam sat at the far corner table, laptop open, a half-drunk coffee beside it. He was dressed casually in a dark sweater, jeans, but something about him still gave off the air of a man used to being in charge. She hesitated, wondering if she should say something. But before she could decide, he glanced up and spotted her. That same faint, knowing smile crossed his face. "Zuri, right?" She grinned. "And you're Liam, the guy who almost wore my chai la." He chuckled, closing his laptop. "Guilty." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Join me." They talked longer this time. About Nairobi sunsets and Toronto winters. About how she'd grown up in a small town outside Nairobi, sometimes skipping school to help her mother at the market. About how he'd grown up in a glass and steel world, with boardrooms as his playground and travel as his normal. "I like your story," Liam said at one point. "Most people I meet already have their lives mapped out like blueprints. Yours feels unwritten." She smiled, feeling a warmth she couldn't quite blame on the chai. "That's because I'm still figuring out the ending." Just as she thought the evening was winding down, Liam leaned back in his chair. "I'm hosting a small charity gala tomorrow night," he said. "Not one of those massive red carpet things, this one's more intimate. You'd meet some interesting people." Zuri blinked. "A gala? I don't even own a dress fancy enough for that." "I think you could make a potato sack look elegant," he said with an easy shrug. "But if it helps, I can have my assistant arrange something." The thought made her chest flutter, not just at the offer, but at the fact that he seemed so certain she'd say yes. She hesitated for one beat too long. "No pressure," he added, his tone softer. "I just think you'd enjoy it." She found herself nodding. "All right, I'll come." The next evening, a car arrived to pick her up. On the seat beside her lay a long, sleek garment bag with a handwritten note. "For the girl who's still writing her story." Zuri unzipped it to reveal a deep emerald green gown, the fabric soft and flowing, catching the light like moving water. By the time she stepped out at the entrance of the private venue, every insecurity she'd had about not belonging melted away, especially when she saw Liam waiting for her, his eyes lingering for just a moment longer than was polite. "You look," he paused, searching for the right word, "like trouble." She laughed, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. "And you look like you're used to trouble." That night, as soft jazz floated through the air and city lights glittered beyond the tall windows, Zuri realized she wasn't just stepping into another networking event. She was stepping into his world, and she wasn't sure yet if she'd survive it unchanged. The gala shimmered like a scene from a movie. Soft amber light poured from chandeliers, catching on crystal glasses and sequin dresses. Waiters drifted through the room with trays of champagne, and a jazz trio played slow, warm melodies in the corner. Zuri stood beside Liam as he introduced her to a handful of guests. Some faces were warm and welcoming, others politely curious, the kind of curiosity that comes with trying to place someone in the invisible social hierarchy. She held her own, smiling, asking questions, and laughing when appropriate. But every now and then, she caught Liam watching her. Not in a controlling way, more as though he was quietly proud. Later in the evening, the band shifted to a slow tune. Couples began drifting onto the dance floor. Liam turned to her with a teasing smile. "Do you dance?" "Only in my kitchen," Zuri said with a laugh. "Then this will be an upgrade," he said, offering his hand. She hesitated only for a moment before sliding her fingers into his. His palm was warm, steady, and when he led her onto the dance floor, the rest of the room seemed to fade away. "I'm guessing this isn't your first gala," she teased. "Guilty," he said, his voice low. "But I think it's the first one I've actually wanted to be at in a while." She felt the corner of her mouth curl upward, her heartbeat falling into rhythm with the soft sway of the music. The music ended, and applause rippled gently through the room. Liam gave her a faint smile, but his eyes had drifted somewhere far away. The gala ended with a slow fade of music and polite farewells. By the time Zuri and Liam left, the city was a blur of soft rain and neon reflections in the puddles. A black car waited outside, but instead of driving her straight back to her apartment, Liam leaned toward her and said, "Want to see something?" Her curiosity sparked instantly. "Depends. Is it illegal?" "Only in the sense that it's breathtaking," he said with that faint, mischievous smirk that made her pulse skip. They drove for about 20 minutes, winding through the quiet streets of downtown until the car stopped in front of an unmarked glass building. The lobby was silent, save for the hum of soft lights. Liam led her to a private elevator and pressed the top floor button. When the doors opened, Zuri stepped out into what looked like a modern penthouse, but it wasn't an apartment. The far wall was made entirely of glass, revealing a panoramic view of the city. Lights glittered like scattered jewels. Rain traced silver lines down the glass. "Wow," she breathed, walking closer until she could see her own reflection layered over the skyline. "This is my favorite place in the city," Liam said quietly, standing a few feet behind her. "It's where I think when everything gets noisy." She turned to him. "Noisy?" A faint shadow crossed his expression. "Business, family expectations. You've probably noticed that my world comes with a lot of eyes. And not all of them are friendly." For a moment, the city lights seemed to hum between them, the unspoken weight settling in the air. Zuri held his gaze. "Then why let me in? I'm not part of your world." His lips curved into a small, almost vulnerable smile. "That's exactly why." She didn't know who leaned in first, but their lips met softly, the kiss tasting faintly of rain and champagne. The city was spread out beneath them, and for a few heartbeats, the rest of the world simply didn't exist. When they finally pulled apart, Liam's hand brushed hers gently. "I'm not promising you anything easy," he said, "but I am promising you real." And she believed him. The next morning, Zuri woke in her small but sunlit apartment to the smell of fresh coffee and the buzzing of her phone. Liam had sent a simple message. "Lunch today? My place. Noon." She smiled, typing back a quick yes before heading to the bathroom. Even though she told herself it was just lunch, her pulse was already quickening. Liam's penthouse was as pristine and breathtaking as the first time she saw it, but today, it felt different. The air was warmer, more personal. He greeted her at the door without a suit, just a soft gray sweater and dark jeans. "You made it. I was starting to think fame had gotten to your head," he teased. She laughed. "Give me a few more brand deals first." Over lunch, grilled salmon, lemon rice, and roasted vegetables, the conversation flowed easily. They talked about her growing social media following, his latest charity project, and the fact that he still didn't know how to cook pasta without calling his private chef. Liam excused himself to take the call in his office, the glass door closing behind him. Zuri didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the voices carried faintly through the half-closed blinds. "The offshore accounts can't be linked back here, understood?" The man's voice was deep, clipped. Liam's reply was lower, harder to hear. Everything's in motion. The less Zuri knows, the better. Her stomach tightened. The less Zuri knows? She turned back to her dessert, trying to keep her expression neutral as Liam returned minutes later. That night, as she scrolled through her phone in bed, she stumbled on an article about Liam's company, a piece about aggressive expansion in developing countries. The comments section was filled with accusations, land disputes, buyouts, secrecy. And for the first time, she wondered, what exactly had she fallen into? The next few days felt like walking through a dream Zuri wasn't sure she wanted to wake from, but one that kept changing shape the moment she reached out to hold it. Her social media following was exploding, brand emails were pouring in, and yet, in the quiet moments, she kept hearing Liam's voice in her head. The less Zuri knows, the better. 3 days later, he called. I need you to pack a bag, he said before she could even say hello. Zuri sat up on her bed, laptop sliding to the side. For what? Paris, he replied, as if it were as simple as saying the coffee shop down the street. I have business there for a few days. Maybe you'd like to see the Eiffel Tower with me? Her heart skipped. Paris. The city she'd only ever seen in movies, with its glittering lights and whispers of love. But her rational side tugged. Liam, why me? I mean, we've only known each other for a little while. There was a pause on the line, then his voice softened. Because you make me forget how transactional my life usually is. And I want you to see the world, Zuri. With me. 2 days later, she was standing in Pearson International Airport's VIP terminal, passport in hand, clutching a designer carry-on Liam had sent over as if it were a ticket into another world. He arrived in a perfectly tailored navy suit, carrying no luggage of his own. Everything's already waiting for us at the hotel, he said, guiding her toward the private jet. Inside, Zuri's breath caught. Cream leather seats, crystal glasses, and a window view of the setting sun painting the horizon gold. As they took off, Liam poured champagne. To Paris, he said. To Paris, she echoed, but the question in her mind lingered like a shadow. One night, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the sparkling Eiffel Tower, Liam placed a small velvet box in her hands. Her breath hitched. Inside, a delicate gold necklace set with a single diamond. It reminded me of you, he said simply. Zuri smiled, but her mind was torn. Was this love, or was she being drawn deeper into something she didn't understand? Zuri woke before Liam the next morning, the soft Paris light filtering through gauzy curtains. The air smelled faintly of roses, a lingering trace from the bouquet he'd had delivered the night before. She padded quietly across the suite, planning to make herself coffee from the gleaming espresso machine in the corner. That's when she saw it. A cream envelope, thick and expensive-looking, lay half-tucked beneath the leather binder on Liam's desk. Her name wasn't on it, but curiosity tugged harder than manners. She glanced toward the bedroom. Liam was still asleep, the steady rhythm of his breathing drifting out from under the covers. She slid the envelope free. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate. Inside, a folded letter in French. Zuri didn't know more than a few words, but 2 details hit her immediately. Liam's name appeared 3 times. A number $2,500,000 stood out in bold black ink. Her heart skipped. Money. And a lot of it. She was still staring at the paper when she heard his voice. Looking for something? She froze, making coffee. He crossed the room slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. He took the letter from her hand, folded it neatly, and placed it back in the envelope. Then, with an unreadable smile, he said, Some things in my life are complicated, Zuri. But you don't have to be. The rest of the day was perfect on the surface. A morning at the Louvre, lunch at a hidden cafe, champagne at sunset. But Zuri couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. That night, lying beside him as the Eiffel Tower's lights danced across the ceiling, she wondered, was she falling in love or falling into a story she wouldn't be able to walk away from? The invitation came unexpectedly. A black car pulled up in front of their hotel that evening, the driver stepping out with a crisp, Monsieur Ashford asked me to escort you both to dinner. Zuri blinked. We're going somewhere special? Liam's mouth quivered in a half-smile. Somewhere important. The restaurant was tucked into a narrow Parisian street, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it, just a discreet gold sign above the door. Inside, it was all candlelight and whispered conversations. The maitre d' led them to a private room in the back. At the table, waiting with a glass of wine already in hand, was a woman. She was striking mid-40s, with perfectly styled silver hair and eyes like polished steel. She smiled at Zuri first. "You must be the Kenyan beauty I've been hearing about." Liam pulled out Zuri's chair. "Zuri, this is Isabelle Duval. Old friend." Old friend. The words sounded harmless, but the way Isabelle looked at Liam like she knew every secret he'd ever kept made Zuri's stomach tighten. Isabelle asked about Zuri's influencer work, her trip to Canada, her impressions of Paris. But her questions to Liam were sharper, veiled in politeness. "So, the Montreal deal is still on?" Isabelle asked, swirling her wine. "Yes," Liam replied without missing a beat. "And the oil transfer?" Zuri's fork paused midair. "Transfer?" Liam's tone cooled a fraction. "It's being handled." After dessert, Isabelle leaned left. In the car ride back, Liam was quiet, watching the city blur past. Zuri finally asked, "Who is she really?" He glanced at her, the flicker of a grin returning but only just. "Someone who's been in my life a long time," he said. "And someone who enjoys stirring the pot." He took her hand, squeezed it gently. "Don't let her get into your head." But that night, lying in the dark, Zuri knew the warning had already taken root. The city was hushed that night, the kind of Paris evening where even the air felt slow and warm. Zuri woke to find Liam's side of the bed empty. She slipped on one of his oversized shirts and padded barefoot through the suite, finding the balcony doors ajar. Beyond them, a narrow staircase wound up to the rooftop. Liam stood there, hands in his pockets, gazing out at the Eiffel Tower as it shimmered gold in the distance. The wind played with his hair, and for a moment he looked almost vulnerable. "You couldn't sleep either?" Zuri asked, stepping beside him. He smiled faintly. "Didn't want to wake you." They stood in silence for a beat, the city stretching endless around them. Then Zuri turned, leaning on the railing. "Liam." Isabelle's comment. "The hood transfer. What is she talking about?" Liam's jaw tightened. He stared at the city lights for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Snowflakes swirled through the air as the limousine rolled away from the private terminal at Montreal Trudeau Airport. Zuri pressed her forehead to the cold window, marveling at the city, the Gothic rooftops, the narrow streets glowing under warm yellow lamplight. Beside her, Liam was quiet, his phone face down on his lap. "You're not even going to look out the window?" she teased gently. He glanced over and smiled faintly. "I've seen it before. But I like seeing it through your eyes." Zuri shook her head, laughing. "That's the smoothest thing you've said all day." But she could feel it shift. The lightness of Paris had been replaced with something heavier. Their hotel was all glass and steel, perched over the frozen harbor. Liam had booked the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made Zuri feel like she was floating above the city. She barely had time to take her coat off before he said, "We'll have to stay in tonight." "But I wanted to see old Montreal." Liam hesitated. "I just think it's safer." That word, safer, stuck in her mind like a splinter. She didn't push. Not yet. But sometime after midnight, Zuri woke to muffled voices in the suite's outer room. She slipped out of bed, padded barefoot toward the sound, and froze when she heard it. "Liam." And a man's voice is low, accented, and dangerous. "You have until the end of the week, Lancaster, or I collect in other ways." Zuri's pulse thundered in her ears. She stepped back into the shadows as the man left tall, wearing a heavy wool coat, a silver scar running down one cheek. Find out what happens in their relationship in the next episode, which is coming up soon, by clicking on the notification icon. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also tell us the country you are watching us from in the comments section so that we will make a story for you.